Hello, friends. If you're curious about the movie A Perfect Ending, 2012, you're in the perfect place. Don't forget to give this video a quick like, it really helps us out. And if you're new here, hit subscribe to stay updated on all the latest movie deep dives. Let's jump right in. There are films that tell stories, and then there are films that unfold like whispered confessions, revealing secrets that feel almost too intimate to share. A Perfect Ending is one of those films. It is a story wrapped in sensuality, longing, and self-discovery, a journey that pulls you in not through loud action or shocking twists, but through the quiet unraveling of a woman's deepest desires and fears. It is a film that does not simply ask what it means to love, but what it means to feel truly alive. At its core, A Perfect Ending is not just about romance or attraction. It is about a woman stepping beyond the roles she has been assigned, wife, mother, dutiful partner, and discovering who she is beneath them. It is about secrets kept too long, about the weight of a life that looks perfect on the surface but is hollow underneath. And when love arrives, unexpected and unplanned, it does not come in the form of something easy. It comes in the form of transformation, of letting go, of finally embracing the parts of oneself that have been ignored for too long. The film follows Rebecca, played by the mesmerizing Barbara Niven, a woman who seems to have everything: a beautiful home, a family, a life that anyone from the outside would envy. But appearances, as always, can be deceiving. Beneath the surface, Rebecca is suffocating. Her marriage, once a place of security, has become a prison of routine and obligation. The passion is gone. The intimacy is gone. And worse, she cannot remember the last time she truly felt desired, the last time she felt seen. Enter Paris, played with quiet, magnetic energy by Jessica Clarke. She is everything Rebecca is not: free, unapologetic, unafraid of her own body and desires. She is a high-end escort, but her presence in the film is not just about seduction. She is the key to Rebecca's awakening, the catalyst for a change that has been waiting just beneath the surface. When Rebecca's friends suggest that she seek out an experience beyond her marriage, it is not about betrayal. It is about reclaiming something she has lost within herself. From their very first meeting, the air between Rebecca and Paris is charged, not just with attraction, but with something deeper. Paris sees Rebecca in a way no one else does, not as a wife, not as a woman past her prime, but as someone still capable of passion, of desire, of something more than just existing. And Rebecca, hesitant and trembling on the edge of something she does not yet understand, steps forward instead of retreating. The scenes between them are not just about physical connection. They are about trust, about vulnerability, about opening doors that have long been locked. Rebecca does not just experience pleasure. She experiences herself in a way she never has before. Every touch, every glance is filled with unspoken emotion, with the weight of years spent living for others instead of herself. It is not just about the body. It is about the soul, about finding the courage to embrace the parts of herself she has been told to ignore. But A Perfect Ending is not a simple love story, nor is it a fairy tale. Beneath the romance, there is something else. A truth that cannot be avoided, a shadow that lingers even in the brightest moments. Rebecca is sick. She has spent so much of her life ignoring her own needs, and now, time itself is slipping away from her. This is not just a story of rediscovery, it is a story of urgency, of a woman realizing that she does not have forever. That if she wants to feel something, to truly live, she must do it now. And so the love that blooms between Rebecca and Paris is not just about passion. It is about time, about the fleeting nature of life, about grasping something beautiful before it is too late. Paris becomes more than just a lover. She becomes a mirror, reflecting back to Rebecca all the things she thought she had lost. And Rebecca, in turn, becomes something new. Not just a wife, not just a mother, but a woman in full command of her desires, her choices, her truth. The film moves with the quiet intensity of a secret being told in the dark. Every scene lingers just long enough to feel like a stolen moment, a whisper of something sacred. The cinematography is intimate, the lighting soft and warm, pulling the audience into the world of Rebecca's emotions. The camera does not just watch, it breathes with the characters, capturing the tremble of a hand, the flicker of uncertainty in an eye, the moment when fear gives way to surrender. And then, as all things do, it comes to an end. But this is not a tragedy, nor is it a story of regret. It is a story of liberation, of a woman who found herself in the most unexpected of places. A woman who, even in the face of something inevitable, chose to live fully, to feel everything, to embrace love not as a possession but as an experience, fleeting but profound. A Perfect Ending is not a film for everyone. It does not offer easy answers. It does not fit neatly into a single genre. It is romantic but not traditional, erotic but not exploitative, heartbreaking but not hopeless. It is a film that asks its audience to see love and desire not as things that belong to the young or the unattached, but as things that belong to everyone, at every stage of life. And that is what makes it unforgettable. If you love films that challenge conventions, that explore love in all its complexity, that dare to be both intimate and profound, A Perfect Ending is a journey worth taking. It is not just about romance, it is about self-discovery, about courage, about the simple but radical act of allowing oneself to feel. And if you want to explore more films like this, films that take you beyond the surface, that dive deep into the human experience, don't forget to subscribe. There are so many more stories waiting to be uncovered, so many more emotions waiting to be felt. Because sometimes, the most unexpected stories are the ones that stay with us forever. There is something about longing that lingers in the air, something about the quiet ache of a life lived in obligation rather than passion. A Perfect Ending does not introduce itself with loud declarations or sweeping gestures. Instead, it begins in the silence of a woman's life, in the quiet corners of a home that should feel warm but instead feels like a place where she has been trapped for far too long. Rebecca is a woman who seems to have it all, or at least, that is what the world would assume. She has wealth, status, a family, and a husband who, from the outside, appears to provide everything she could possibly need. But need is a strange thing, and as the camera lingers on Rebecca's face in those first few moments, it is clear that something is missing. There is a distance in her eyes, a weight in her posture, a loneliness that no amount of luxury can erase. Her marriage is not unhappy in the way that people expect unhappy marriages to be. There are no screaming fights, no slammed doors, no scandals. But that is almost worse. Instead of rage, there is indifference. Instead of passion, there is politeness. Her husband does not see her. He looks at her as one might look at an expensive painting hanging on the wall, something beautiful to admire but never to truly engage with. Rebecca has lived her life by the rules, following the expectations placed upon her. She has played the role of the devoted wife, the caring mother, the elegant woman who never steps out of line. But beneath the surface, there is something else. A restlessness. A yearning. And when her closest friends suggest something radical, that she seek out an experience beyond her marriage, it is not disgust or rejection that flashes across her face. It is fear. Fear of the idea, fear of the temptation, fear of what it might mean if she allows herself to say yes. But the thought does not leave her. It lingers in the back of her mind, creeping into quiet moments, filling the spaces between her carefully controlled life. What if there is something more? What if there is a part of her that has been asleep all this time, waiting to be woken up? It is not an impulsive decision. It is not something she does lightly. When Rebecca finally makes the call, when she agrees to meet someone, it is with hands that shake slightly, with a heart that beats just a little faster. She does not know what she is stepping into, only that she is stepping away from the life she has always known. And then she meets Paris. The moment Paris enters the story, the atmosphere shifts. There is something about her, something effortless, something confident, something that makes the air around her feel different. She is not loud, not forceful, but she is present in a way that Rebecca is not used to. Paris does not see her as a wife, as a mother, as a woman past a certain age. She sees her as she is. And that, more than anything, is what unsettles Rebecca the most. Their first meeting is filled with tension, not the kind that comes from fear, but the kind that comes from stepping into the unknown. Rebecca is hesitant, uncertain, not sure what she is supposed to do or how she is supposed to feel. Paris, on the other hand, is calm, patient, unbothered by the awkwardness of it all. She has seen this before. She understands what it means to watch someone stand at the edge of something new, not yet ready to jump but unable to walk away. Their conversations are careful at first, like a dance where neither wants to step too far in the wrong direction. Paris asks questions. Rebecca hesitates before answering. There is vulnerability in this, in speaking truths that she has never said out loud. And yet, there is also relief. Rebecca has spent so much of her life repressing, controlling, holding back. And here, in this quiet room with this stranger, she feels something shift. It is not just about desire. It is about permission. The permission to want. The permission to feel. The permission to exist as something more than what she has been told she should be. But even as the tension builds, even as the possibility of something more hovers in the air between them, Rebecca is not ready. She leaves. She tells herself she cannot do this, that it is wrong, that she is not this kind of woman. But the moment she walks away, she realizes that she does not want to be the woman she has been anymore. The film does not rush this transformation. It allows Rebecca the space to struggle with it, to resist it, to wrestle with the parts of herself that have been conditioned to believe that passion and desire belong only to the young, that love is only valid when it is tied to duty, that women like her do not get to rediscover themselves. And so, despite her fears, despite everything she has been taught, she returns. This time, there is less hesitation. This time, when Paris looks at her, she does not look away. Their conversations become deeper, less about politeness and more about truth. Paris does not push her, does not try to control the moment. Instead, she waits, allowing Rebecca to find her own way forward. And when the moment finally comes, when Rebecca allows herself to let go, it is not just about attraction. It is about freedom. It is about stepping outside of the life she has always known and into something that feels real for the first time. But just as Rebecca begins to embrace this new part of herself, a shadow lingers in the background. A truth that she has been avoiding, that she has been pushing aside even as she steps into this new life. She is sick. The film does not present this as a punishment, nor does it make it the sole focus of Rebecca's journey. But it is there, a reminder that time is not infinite, that the choices we make are urgent, that there is no waiting for the right moment to start living. Rebecca does not yet know how this will end. She does not yet know what this new chapter in her life will mean. But what she does know is that she is not the same woman she was when she first walked into that room. And that changes everything. Rebecca stands at the edge of something she never expected, her life split into two distinct versions of herself. The woman she was before Paris and the woman she is becoming now. The air feels different, charged with a kind of energy she had long forgotten. There is no turning back. Even if she wanted to, she has already stepped too far beyond the boundaries she once followed so rigidly. Paris is still a mystery to her, and maybe that is part of what draws her in. There is something about her that feels like both an invitation and a challenge. She does not push Rebecca, does not demand anything. She simply exists, patient, waiting for Rebecca to find the courage to step fully into this new part of herself. But with each passing moment, with every lingering glance and every whisper-soft touch, Rebecca realizes that this is more than just an affair, more than just an escape. It is something deeper, something raw and unfiltered. She had never planned for this, never expected it. And yet, here she is, falling into it without resistance. But there are realities that cannot be ignored. Rebecca's life outside of this affair does not disappear. She still returns to the house that no longer feels like home, to the husband who still does not see her. He is growing suspicious, Not because he loves her, not because he fears losing her, but because she has changed. And change, in a world that demands predictability, is dangerous. Her friends, the same ones who first encouraged her to seek out something new, begin to notice it too. There is something different about Rebecca now. The way she moves, the way she smiles, the way her voice carries something lighter, something freer. But freedom comes at a cost. Paris, as much as she represents something intoxicating and new, is also someone who understands that all beautiful things are temporary. She has learned not to hold on too tightly, to let people come and go, to exist in the space between wanting and knowing that wanting is never enough. But with Rebecca, it is different. There is something breaking through the surface, something fragile but undeniable. And then, the truth that has been waiting in the background finally steps forward. Rebecca's illness is not something she can ignore any longer. It has been there all along, a quiet whisper growing louder, demanding to be acknowledged. She is running out of time. The weight of it settles over everything. She has spent so much of her life avoiding, suppressing, pretending that she was fine, that she was content. But now, with the end creeping closer, she realizes that she no longer wants to pretend. She does not tell Paris right away. Instead, she allows herself to exist in the moments they have together, in the stolen glances and lingering touches, in the warmth of being wanted, being seen. She does not tell Paris right away. Instead, she allows herself to exist in the moments they have together, in the stolen glances and lingering touches, in the warmth of being wanted, being seen. But the secret is heavy, and secrets, no matter how well hidden, always find their way to the surface. When Paris finally learns the truth, she does not react with pity or sadness. She does not pull away. Instead, she holds Rebecca closer, as if to say, "I see you. I am here." There is no promise of forever, no illusion that this will last. Only the reality of now, of what they have, of what they can still hold on to while there is time. Rebecca is not afraid anymore. Not of what comes next, not of the choices she has made. For the first time, she has lived. For the first time, she has allowed herself to want, to feel, to love without hesitation. But endings come whether we are ready or not. Rebecca returns home one last time, standing in the space that once held her captive and realizing that it no longer has power over her. She is no longer that woman, no longer bound by expectation, by duty, by the weight of a life she never truly chose. And when the final moments come, there is no regret. Only peace. Only the knowledge that she did not waste the time she had left. Only the understanding that, in the end, love is not about how long it lasts, but about how deeply it is felt. She closes her eyes. And for the first time, everything feels exactly as it should be. Rebecca has spent her life being everything she was supposed to be. A wife, a mother, a woman who fit neatly into the role that had been designed for her. She is poised, elegant, and outwardly composed, but beneath the surface, there is something else, a quiet desperation, a longing for something she cannot quite name. She has never allowed herself to step outside the carefully curated world she inhabits, never questioned whether there could be more. But the moment she does, the moment she dares to take that first uncertain step, everything changes. Her journey is not one of recklessness but of awakening. She does not seek out passion for the sake of rebellion. She seeks it because, for the first time, she realizes she is starving for it. There is a difference between being alive and truly living, and Rebecca has spent too many years simply existing. Her interactions with Paris are not just about desire but about self-discovery. With every moment she spends with her, Rebecca begins to shed the layers of obligation, of expectation, of the version of herself that was built to please others rather than to fulfill her own wants. Paris is a study in contrasts. She is young, but her eyes hold an understanding far beyond her years. She is independent, unafraid, seemingly in control of her world, and yet there is a gentleness to her, a patience that is not forced but deeply genuine. She has seen people like Rebecca before, women who have lived their lives for others, who have never truly touched freedom until they were desperate enough to reach for it. But with Rebecca, it is different. There is something real between them, something unspoken but undeniable. She does not push. She does not try to shape Rebecca into something new. She simply gives her space to become what she was always meant to be. And in doing so, she, too, finds herself drawn into something unexpected. Paris is used to encounters that end before they truly begin, used to goodbyes that mean nothing. But this is different. Rebecca is different. And that, perhaps, is what makes their connection so fragile, so powerful. Then there is the husband, a man who is not cruel, not abusive, not overtly villainous, but who is nonetheless responsible for the slow suffocation of Rebecca's spirit. He does not see her, not really. To him, she is a fixture in his life, a part of the perfect image he has constructed. He does not ask what she wants, because it has never occurred to him that she could want something beyond what he has provided. And when she begins to change, when he senses the shift in her, it is not concern that drives his suspicion, it is possession. Rebecca's friends, the ones who encourage her to seek something beyond her marriage, are not simply there to push the plot forward. They represent something else entirely, the knowledge that desire, passion, and self-discovery do not have an expiration date. They have lived, they have made choices, and they see in Rebecca a woman who has been denying herself for far too long. Their encouragement is not about betrayal, but about freedom. In the end, Rebecca is not a woman who breaks the rules for the sake of breaking them. She is a woman who finally understands that her life is her own. That love is not something that must fit into neat, socially acceptable boxes. That time is fleeting, and regret is far heavier than the weight of any choice she could make. Her final moments are not about sadness, but about resolution. She is no longer afraid, no longer uncertain. She has lived. And that, more than anything, is the perfect ending she never knew she was searching for. Some films are made in a straightforward way, scripts written, scenes shot, stories told. Others, like A Perfect Ending, carry an energy that lingers long after the cameras stop rolling. Sometimes it's in the way the story unfolds, sometimes it's in the performances, and sometimes it's in the way the film comes to life behind the scenes. There are always details, hidden moments, strange coincidences that shape a film in ways audiences never see. And A Perfect Ending is no exception. What makes this film unique is not just its subject matter but the way it was made. The choices, the risks, the atmosphere created on set, and the energy that fueled every scene. It was not a big-budget production with massive sets or extravagant visual effects, but that only added to its authenticity. The rawness of its storytelling was reflected in the way it was created, and in that process, some fascinating and unexpected things unfolded. Barbara Niven, who plays Rebecca, was not initially sure she could take on the role. It wasn't the complexity of the character that intimidated her. She had played emotionally layered roles before, but the vulnerability required was on a different level. The film did not just demand her to act, it demanded her to bear parts of herself that she had never shown on screen before. The emotional intensity, the physical intimacy, the deep, aching self-discovery that Rebecca undergoes, it all felt personal. But that was exactly why she took it. What few people know is that Niven had deep personal reasons for taking this role. She later revealed in interviews that she had spent much of her own life living in fear of what people would think of her, of not fully embracing herself. She saw Rebecca's journey as one she could relate to, not just as an actress, but as a woman. There was something cathartic about playing a character who sheds the expectations of others and steps into her truth. In a way, A Perfect Ending was not just Rebecca's story, it was Barbara's too. Jessica Clarke, who played Paris, had a completely different experience stepping into her role. Unlike Niven, she was new to the industry. She had been a model before turning to acting, and A Perfect Ending was one of her first major film roles. But despite her inexperience, there was something about her presence that made her the perfect fit. Paris is a character who carries a quiet confidence, someone who understands the weight of other people's pain without letting it overwhelm her. Clarke brought an effortless grace to the role, a kind of natural magnetism that made every scene with her feel electric. What's interesting is that despite how smooth and composed Paris appears on screen, Clarke herself was incredibly nervous before shooting her first scene. She later admitted that she felt intimidated working alongside Barbara Niven, an experienced actress with decades of work behind her. But the moment the cameras rolled, something clicked. The chemistry between them was undeniable, something that could not be faked or forced. It was one of the elements that made the film feel so deeply real. One of the most fascinating aspects of A Perfect Ending was how much trust played a role behind the scenes. Nicole Kahn, the director, had a vision for this film that was deeply personal. She had always been drawn to stories about transformation, about love that defies expectations, about the quiet moments that shape a person's life. But this film, in particular, was close to her heart. There was an unspoken understanding on set that this was not just a film, it was an exploration of something deeper. The cast and crew were small, almost like a family, and the atmosphere was unlike the usual high-pressure environments of film sets. Scenes were not just rehearsed, they were felt. The actors were given space to breathe, to find the emotions naturally rather than forcing them. One of the most surprising behind-the-scenes details was how much improvisation played a role in certain moments. While the script was carefully crafted, there were scenes, particularly those between Rebecca and Paris, that were allowed to unfold organically. Some of the most intimate, emotionally charged moments were not planned down to the last detail. They were guided by instinct, by the raw emotions that the actors brought to the table. It created a kind of authenticity that could not have been achieved with rigid direction. The cinematography of the film was another interesting challenge. A Perfect Ending is a deeply intimate movie, and the way it was shot reflects that. The camera does not just observe, it lingers, capturing every subtle change in expression, every unspoken thought. The lighting was carefully designed to enhance the warmth of certain scenes while emphasizing the coldness of others. Rebecca's home, for example, was often lit in a way that made it feel sterile, empty, a place of obligation rather than comfort. But when she is with Paris, the lighting shifts, softer, more inviting, a visual representation of the change happening within her. One of the most unusual occurrences during production involved the music. The film's score played a crucial role in setting the tone, but what many people don't know is that some of the music was chosen in a way that felt almost serendipitous. The composers worked closely with Kahn, but there were moments when the music seemed to find the film rather than the other way around. There were songs that fit so perfectly with certain scenes that it was as if they had been written specifically for the film, even though they existed long before it was made. Another fascinating detail is that some of the most emotionally powerful scenes were also the most difficult to shoot, not because of technical challenges, but because of the emotional toll they took on the actors. There were moments when Barbara Niven had to step away after filming a scene, needing a moment to recover from the rawness of what she had just experienced. There were times when the intensity of the story, the weight of the emotions, made it feel less like acting and more like something deeply personal being exposed. But that was what made the film so powerful. It was not just about playing roles, it was about revealing truths. One of the strangest and most memorable moments on set was an unexpected interruption during a critical scene. While filming one of the most emotional confrontations, a loud noise from outside disrupted the scene. An entire wedding party had unknowingly set up right near their filming location. The contrast was almost too surreal. Inside, the actors were immersed in a moment of deep, heartbreaking emotion, while just outside, laughter and music filled the air. It was a bizarre reminder of the way life exists in contradictions, love and sorrow, beginnings and endings, all happening at once. When A Perfect Ending was finally completed, no one knew exactly how it would be received. It was not a mainstream Hollywood production. It was an independent film with a deeply personal story. But what happened after its release was something unexpected. The film resonated with people in a way that went beyond the usual discussions of cinematography or performances. People saw themselves in Rebecca. They saw their own fears, their own longings, their own quiet battles between duty and desire. Some of the most emotional responses to the film came from people who had never seen their own experiences reflected on screen before. Women who had spent their lives suppressing parts of themselves, people who had never dared to step outside of what was expected of them. A Perfect Ending was more than just a film to them. It was a mirror, showing them that it was never too late to rediscover who they truly were. The film's legacy is not in massive box office numbers or blockbuster success. Its impact is quieter, but in many ways more profound. It is the kind of film that lingers, the kind that people return to when they need to be reminded that it is never too late to choose themselves. And in the end, maybe that is the strangest, most wonderful fact of all, not just about the making of the film, but about the power of storytelling itself. Some films entertain, some films move, and some, like A Perfect Ending, change people in ways they never expected. There are films that challenge conventions, films that make audiences question the way they see love, desire, and self-discovery. A Perfect Ending is one of those films. It does not simply tell a story. It invites the audience to step into an experience, one that is deeply intimate, unapologetically raw, and unafraid to explore themes that many films hesitate to touch. Every event, every moment is carefully woven into a larger narrative that is about more than romance. It is about transformation, about shedding the roles imposed by society, about what it means to truly live before it is too late. From the very beginning, the film presents its protagonist, Rebecca, not as a woman who is lost, but as a woman who has yet to realize she has been missing something. She exists in a world that looks perfect from the outside, a beautiful home, a family, a life of comfort, but perfection is often just another form of confinement. The camera lingers on her face in moments of stillness, capturing the quiet weight of her unspoken desires. She is not unhappy in a dramatic way. There are no explosive fights, no betrayals, no overt signs of misery. And yet, she is suffocating. The audience sees it in the way she hesitates before speaking, in the way she moves through her own home like a guest rather than someone who belongs there. One of the most significant events in the film is the moment Rebecca makes the choice to seek something outside of her marriage. It is a turning point, not because of the act itself, but because it is the first time she allows herself to acknowledge her own longing. Until this point, she has lived her life for others, her husband, her children, the expectations placed upon her. But this moment is hers alone. It is not about rebellion. It is about reclamation. The act of seeking intimacy with someone outside of the life she has always known is not framed as betrayal, but as self-discovery. Paris enters the story not as a disruptor, not as someone who tempts Rebecca into making reckless choices, but as a mirror. She does not demand anything from Rebecca. She does not seduce her in a conventional way. Instead, she listens. She sees. And in doing so, she allows Rebecca to see herself, perhaps for the first time. This is where the film shifts from being a story about an affair to being a story about awakening. The interactions between Rebecca and Paris are not rushed, nor are they presented in a way that feels transactional. Instead, they unfold like a slow, delicate unraveling. Rebecca hesitates at first, not out of fear of Paris, but out of fear of herself, of what it means to admit that she wants something beyond what she has always been given. The film does not treat this as a moment of scandal, but as a moment of revelation. Desire is not framed as something reckless or indulgent, but as something deeply human, something that has been denied to her for too long. This is where the film challenges traditional narratives about romance, especially in stories centered on women. So often, films present love and desire as things that belong only to the young, as if passion has an expiration date, as if self-discovery is something that happens once and never again. A Perfect Ending rejects that idea entirely. It presents Rebecca's journey not as something she is too late for, but as something that is happening at exactly the right time. It tells its audience that there is no such thing as too late. As their relationship deepens, the film does not rely on grand declarations or melodramatic moments. Instead, it finds power in the quiet, in the way Rebecca's body language changes, in the way her voice carries a different weight when she speaks. The chemistry between them is not forced. It is patient, allowing room for hesitation, for doubt, for the slow realization that this is not just about physical attraction. It is about being seen, about being known, about finally allowing herself to exist without apology. And then, the second major turning point. The revelation that Rebecca is sick. Illness in films is often used as a device to create tragedy, to give love stories a sense of urgency. But in A Perfect Ending, it is not used to elicit pity. It is not a punishment for her choices, nor is it something that defines her. It is a reminder of what she already knew, that time is not infinite, that life is fragile, that there is no guarantee of tomorrow. It is a catalyst, not for fear, but for clarity. With this knowledge, every moment between her and Paris becomes more significant. Every touch, every glance, every whispered conversation carries more weight. The urgency is not about dying. It is about living. The decision to spend her remaining time in pursuit of something real, something true, is not made out of desperation. It is made out of the understanding that she finally knows what she wants, and she refuses to let it slip away. This is where the film's emotional resonance becomes undeniable. It is not about a forbidden love story. It is about what it means to embrace oneself fully, even when time is short. It is about making the choice to feel, even when feeling means risking heartbreak. It is about understanding that love is not measured by longevity, but by depth. One of the most powerful scenes in the film is not a dramatic goodbye, not a moment of sorrow, but a moment of quiet acceptance. Rebecca does not collapse under the weight of what is coming. She does not regret. Instead, she allows herself to be present, to exist in the love she has found, even knowing that it is temporary. The film does not frame this as a loss, but as a victory from a critical perspective. A Perfect Ending does something few films dare to do. It tells a love story that is not defined by age, by expectation, by convention. It explores sexuality in a way that is neither exploitative nor sensationalized. It presents intimacy not as spectacle, but as something deeply personal, something sacred. The reception of the film reflected its impact. While it was not a mainstream blockbuster, it found an audience that resonated with its themes. It became a film that people did not just watch, but felt. It sparked conversations about representation, about the ways in which female desire is often dismissed or ignored in cinema, about the importance of telling stories that do not fit into traditional molds. Many viewers saw themselves in Rebecca, not necessarily in her exact circumstances, but in her journey. In the way she struggled to reclaim herself, in the way she fought against the idea that love and passion were things she was no longer entitled to. The film became more than just a story. It became a reflection of something deeply human. And that is why A Perfect Ending lingers. It is not a film that relies on grand gestures or dramatic twists. It is a film that understands that the most profound moments are often the quietest ones. That self-discovery is not always loud. That love does not always arrive in the form we expect. In the end, it is a film about choice. The choice to live. The choice to love. The choice to embrace every moment, even when the future is uncertain. And perhaps that is why it resonates so deeply, because at its core, it is not just a story about Rebecca. It is a story about all of us, about the choices we make, about the love we allow ourselves to receive, about the perfect endings we create for ourselves. Some films are made with massive budgets, sprawling sets, and armies of crew members working around the clock to bring every frame to life. Others, like A Perfect Ending, come together in a different way, built from passion, trust, and an unshakable belief in the story being told. It was never meant to be a blockbuster. It was never designed to follow Hollywood's traditional formulas. Instead, it was created with an intimacy that mirrored its themes, a rawness that made every moment feel more like a whispered confession than a scripted performance. The production of A Perfect Ending was an experience unlike any other, shaped by its cast and crew, by unexpected challenges, by moments of serendipity that could never have been planned. Nicole Kahn, the film's director, knew from the beginning that this film was personal. She had always been drawn to stories that existed in the space between what is expected and what is real, between duty and desire, between longing and fulfillment. But A Perfect Ending was not just another project, it was a story that carried weight, one that required the kind of vulnerability rarely seen on screen. She knew that to make it work, she needed a team who understood that, actors who were willing to lay themselves bare, and a production that prioritized emotion over spectacle. Casting was one of the most critical parts of the filmmaking process. The film hinges entirely on the chemistry between Rebecca and Paris. Without it, nothing else would matter. Barbara Niven was not the obvious choice for Rebecca. At the time, she was known for her work in mainstream film and television, but she had never taken on a role like this before. It was raw, it was intimate, and it required her to expose not just her character's vulnerabilities, but her own. When Khan approached Niven with the script, the actress hesitated. Not because she did not believe in the story, but because she knew how deeply it would affect her. She later admitted that she almost turned it down, afraid of what it would mean to put so much of herself into a role that felt so personal. But something kept pulling her back to it. The more she read the script, the more she saw herself in Rebecca. Not in the specifics of her life, but in the quiet yearning for something more, in the struggle to break free from expectations. And so, she said yes. Jessica Clarke, who played Paris, had a completely different journey into the film. She was not a seasoned actress at the time, but a model stepping into the world of film. Khan was drawn to her presence, to the way she carried herself with quiet confidence, to the way she could say so much without speaking. Paris needed to be more than just a love interest. She needed to be a force of change, someone who could pull Rebecca out of herself without ever feeling like she was taking control. And from the moment Clarke stepped onto set, it was clear that she was perfect for the role. The first time Niven and Clarke met, there was an instant connection, but also nerves. The film required an intense level of trust between them, especially in the most intimate scenes. They spent time together off-set, not rehearsing lines but simply getting to know each other, building the foundation of a relationship that would make their on-screen dynamic feel natural. By the time filming began, their connection was real, not just as actors but as two people stepping into something vulnerable together. The production itself was a challenge. The film did not have the luxury of a major studio budget. Every scene had to be carefully planned, every location chosen for its ability to enhance the story without requiring expensive set construction. Most of the film takes place in quiet, intimate spaces, bedrooms, living rooms, small restaurants. This was not just a stylistic choice, it was a necessity. But in the end, it became one of the film's greatest strengths. The cinematography was designed to reflect Rebecca's transformation. In the beginning, the shots are more rigid, the framing tighter, mirroring her life, a world that feels confined, controlled. But as she begins to open herself up, so does the camera. The shots become looser, the lighting warmer, the angles more fluid. It is a subtle shift, but one that makes all the difference in the way the audience experiences her journey. One of the most fascinating things about the film's production was the way certain scenes evolved naturally. While the script was meticulously written, Khan encouraged moments of improvisation, especially between Niven and Clarke. Some of the most powerful scenes, the lingering touches, the moments of silence where everything is understood without being spoken, were not planned down to the last detail. They were found in the moment, in the way the actors responded to each other, in the emotions that surfaced organically. One of the most challenging scenes to film was the first intimate encounter between Rebecca and Paris. It was not about the physicality. It was about capturing the emotional shift that happens in that moment. It had to feel natural, unforced, a true moment of surrender. The set was closed for the scene, with only the necessary crew members present, creating an environment that felt safe and respectful. Niven later said that despite the vulnerability required, she had never felt more supported on a set. The use of music in the film was another key element that shaped its atmosphere. Rather than relying on a traditional score, the film weaves in music that feels personal, almost like the soundtrack to Rebecca's inner world. Some of the songs were discovered almost by accident, tracks that Khan stumbled upon and knew immediately belonged in the film. One piece, in particular, was chosen at the last moment, yet it fit so perfectly that it felt as if it had been composed specifically for the scene it accompanied. There were also unexpected moments of levity on set. Despite the heavy subject matter, there were times when laughter broke through. Niven and Clark developed a friendship that carried off-screen, and between takes, they would joke, playfully tease each other, find moments of lightness in between the emotionally charged scenes. It was necessary, a way to reset, to remind themselves that while the story was intense, they were safe within it. One of the strangest moments during production happened off-set, when a technical issue almost caused them to lose an entire day's worth of footage. A malfunction with one of the cameras led to panic, as hours of carefully filmed scenes seemed to have been lost. The crew scrambled, desperately trying to recover what had been shot. Miraculously, after hours of stress, the footage was saved. It was a moment that could have derailed everything, but instead, it became a testament to the dedication of the team working behind the scenes. When A Perfect Ending was finally completed, there was no massive red carpet premiere, no nationwide press tour. Instead, it was quietly released, finding its audience in a way that felt almost poetic, through word of mouth, through people who saw themselves in its story and felt compelled to share it. The film became more than just a piece of entertainment. It became something deeply personal to those who connected with it. Women reached out to Niven, to Khan, sharing their own stories, their own moments of realization. Some had lived lives much like Rebecca's, trapped in expectations they never questioned until it was almost too late. Others saw the film as a love letter to the idea that love and passion are not limited by age, by gender, by anything but the willingness to embrace them. The production of A Perfect Ending was not about spectacle. It was about intimacy, about truth, about crafting a story that felt real. And that is what has allowed it to endure. It may not be the kind of film that dominates headlines, but it is the kind of film that stays with people long after the credits roll. And in the end, that is what filmmaking is truly about, not just telling a story, but making people feel it. Some films rely on grand landscapes, sweeping cityscapes, or fantastical worlds to transport their audiences. A Perfect Ending does not. It exists in a world that is much smaller, quieter, more intimate. A Perfect Ending does not. It exists in a world that is much smaller, quieter, more intimate. The settings are not just locations where the story unfolds. They are reflections of the characters, extensions of their emotions, silent witnesses to the moments that change them. Every space in the film is carefully chosen, each frame composed to evoke something deeper than just what is seen on the surface. Rebecca's home is the first and most important space introduced in the film. It is beautiful, elegant, designed to impress. Everything inside it is placed perfectly, untouched, as if it were curated for an art exhibit rather than for a life being lived. The lighting is soft, muted, creating an atmosphere of stillness. But beneath its beauty, there is something else, something cold, something distant. It is a house that holds history but not warmth. It is a space that Rebecca inhabits but does not belong to. The walls are decorated, the furniture carefully arranged, but the home itself feels like a museum, preserving a version of Rebecca that she has long since outgrown but has never been allowed to leave behind. This is where the film first establishes its visual storytelling. The way Rebecca moves through her house tells us everything about how she feels in it. She walks through its rooms with a quiet hesitance, not quite touching anything, never lingering too long in any one place. The camera follows her in slow, deliberate movements, mirroring her reluctance, her hesitation. Even when she is alone, she does not feel free. The home, though beautiful, is a cage, one built from expectations, from obligations, from a life that has been constructed around her rather than one she has chosen for herself. In contrast, Paris's apartment is a world of warmth and comfort. It is not grand, not extravagant, but it is lived in. There are soft lights, personal touches, signs of life in every corner. The first time Rebecca steps into this space, the difference is immediately apparent. The air feels lighter, the space less rigid. Here, nothing is staged, nothing is forced. It is not just a place where Paris lives, it is a place where she exists fully, where she is herself without restriction. The cinematography shifts accordingly. In Rebecca's home, the shots are framed with precision, often symmetrical, trapping her within the structure of her environment. But in Paris's world, the camera breathes. It moves with the characters rather than against them, capturing the fluidity of their conversations, the ease of their interactions. The lighting in these scenes is warmer, softer, casting gentle shadows that make the space feel intimate rather than distant. One of the most significant visual contrasts in the film is the use of mirrors. In Rebecca's home, mirrors appear throughout, but they rarely reflect her fully. There are moments where her face is partially obscured, where the angles distort her image. It is a subtle but powerful way of showing how she sees herself, fragmented, uncertain, never quite whole. But in Paris's presence, the mirrors change. The reflections become clearer, more centered. The first time Rebecca sees herself fully is not in her home, but in Paris's. It is in a moment of quiet, of realization, where she begins to understand that she is not defined by the life she has lived up until now. Another essential setting in the film is the hotel room where Rebecca and Paris meet. Unlike either of their personal spaces, the hotel room is neutral, existing outside of their separate worlds. It is not a place of permanence, but a space that allows for change. The lighting in these scenes is intentionally dim, creating an atmosphere that is neither entirely real nor entirely dreamlike. Here, Rebecca is allowed to shed her past, to step into something new, even if only for a moment. The use of close-ups in these scenes is particularly significant. The camera lingers on small details, the way fingers brush against skin, the way breath catches, the way eyes meet and hold. It is not about spectacle. It is about intimacy, about capturing something delicate, something real. The cinematography does not rush these moments, allowing the emotions to unfold naturally, letting the audience feel the tension, the uncertainty, the desire. One of the most striking visual choices in the film is the way color is used to reflect Rebecca's transformation. In the beginning, her wardrobe consists of muted tones, whites, creams, soft pastels. She blends into the spaces around her, never drawing too much attention. But as she begins to change, as she begins to embrace her own desires, her colors shift. There are deeper hues, richer textures. It is a subtle transformation, but an intentional one. The way she dresses is no longer about blending in, it is about becoming. The film's final setting is not a place, but a moment. It is the quiet before the inevitable, the space between what was and what will be. The lighting becomes softer, the edges of the frame blurred as if reality itself is dissolving. It is a visual representation of acceptance, of peace, of letting go. Rebecca's journey is not defined by where she ends up, but by the spaces she has moved through, by the places that have shaped her, by the moments where she allowed herself to feel. The cinematography in A Perfect Ending is not designed to overwhelm. It is not about grand visuals or technical showmanship. It is about emotion, about atmosphere, about using every frame to tell the story not just through words, but through light, through movement, through silence. It is a film that does not just ask the audience to watch, it asks them to feel. And in the end, that is what makes its world so unforgettable. It is not just a setting. It is an experience, a space that lingers long after the credits roll. Some films are built with massive teams, grand sets, and endless resources, where everything is controlled down to the smallest detail. A Perfect Ending was not one of those films. It was intimate in every sense, not just in its story but in the way it was made. Every moment on set carried the weight of something deeply personal, a shared understanding between the cast and crew that they were telling a story that mattered. It was not just another project, it was an experience, one that would stay with those involved long after the cameras stopped rolling. Filming an independent film always comes with its own set of challenges, but there was something about this production that made every difficulty feel worth it. Director Nicole Kahn had a vision for a perfect ending that required more than just technical precision. She needed trust. She needed actors who were willing to step into something raw, something deeply vulnerable, and she needed a team that understood the importance of telling a story about love, identity, and self-discovery in a way that felt authentic. The casting process was a journey in itself. Barbara Niven, who played Rebecca, was not initially certain she could take on such an emotionally revealing role. She was experienced, having worked in television and film for years, but a perfect ending required a different kind of performance, one that stripped away artifice and allowed the audience to see into the depths of her character's longing and fear. She hesitated, unsure if she was ready. But something about the script, about Rebecca's journey, spoke to her on a level she could not ignore. Once she accepted the role, her biggest concern was not just playing Rebecca convincingly, it was forming a connection with Jessica Clarke, who played Paris. Their chemistry was essential to the film. If their interactions felt forced, if there was even the slightest hesitation between them, the entire story would fall apart. So before filming even began, they spent time together, not rehearsing lines, but simply getting to know each other. They talked, laughed, shared stories. Kahn encouraged this, knowing that the more natural their bond became off-screen, the more effortless it would feel on camera. Jessica Clarke was stepping into one of her first major roles in a film, transitioning from modeling into acting. She later admitted that she was incredibly nervous working alongside Niven, who had so much more experience. But from the beginning, there was mutual respect between them. Niven was kind, reassuring, always making sure Clarke felt comfortable in their scenes together. Filming the intimate scenes was one of the biggest challenges. Unlike many films that treat physical intimacy as something performative, a perfect ending required these moments to feel deeply connected to the characters' emotional journeys. Kahn made the decision to keep the set as closed as possible during these scenes, ensuring that Niven and Clarke felt safe and respected. The choreography of these moments was planned carefully, not just to create visual beauty, but to capture the hesitance, the tenderness, the quiet realizations happening between Rebecca and Paris. One surprising moment on set happened during the filming of one of their first scenes together. The script called for Rebecca to be nervous, unsure of herself, while Paris exuded confidence. But on the first take, it was Clarke who stumbled over her lines, her own nerves getting the best of her. Niven, seeing this, took her hands, smiled, and whispered, "We've got this." The moment settled them both, and what followed was one of the most powerful scenes in the film. But not everything on set was serious. There were moments of levity, times when the intensity of the story needed to be broken with laughter. In between takes, Niven and Clarke developed a playful dynamic, teasing each other, joking about how Rebecca was the most nervous seductress in cinematic history. The crew, despite the emotional weight of the film, found ways to keep the mood light. One running joke involved Kahn constantly reminding Niven to stop overthinking and just be Rebecca. Every time she second-guessed a scene, Kahn would call out, "Less Barbara, more Rebecca." The film's limited budget meant that everyone had to be flexible. Locations had to be chosen carefully, lighting had to be used creatively, and long, expensive shooting days were not an option. But instead of seeing these limitations as setbacks, the team embraced them. The smaller crew allowed for a more intimate working environment, where everyone felt personally invested in the story. One unexpected challenge came during a crucial emotional scene, when a technical malfunction caused a delay. Niven had spent time getting into the emotional state required for the scene, only to be told they would have to pause. She sat quietly, eyes closed, maintaining her focus while the crew scrambled to fix the issue. When the cameras were finally rolling again, she delivered a performance so raw and powerful that even the crew watching behind the monitors found themselves holding their breath. One of the most moving moments happened after filming had wrapped. On the final day of shooting, Kahn gathered the cast and crew together, thanking them not just for their work, but for their trust. She spoke about why this story mattered, about the importance of telling love stories that exist outside of the mainstream, about the way film has the power to make people feel seen. Niven later shared that a perfect ending changed her in ways she had not expected. It was more than just another role. It was an experience that forced her to confront her own vulnerabilities, to embrace the idea that love and desire are not limited by age, by circumstance, by anything other than the willingness to accept them. Clarke, too, found herself deeply affected by the film. It was her first major leading role, and stepping into Paris's world gave her a confidence she had not yet found in herself. She spoke about how playing Paris taught her the importance of presence, of truly seeing the people around her, of recognizing the quiet battles people fight every day. When the film was finally released, it did not arrive with massive fanfare. It was not a blockbuster. It did not dominate headlines. But it found its audience. It found the people who needed to see it, who needed to be reminded that it is never too late to discover who you truly are. And that, in the end, is what made the experience of making a perfect ending so special. It was not just about telling a story. It was about creating something that would linger, something that would stay with people in ways they never expected. Years later, those who were part of it still talk about it, not as just another film, but as a moment in time where something rare and beautiful was captured. A story about love, about choice, about the quiet, powerful act of finally embracing oneself. Some stories are told through words, some through actions, and some through the quiet, unspoken spaces between them. A Perfect Ending is a film that does not rely on grand speeches or dramatic gestures to convey its message. Instead, it is a story built on moments, on glances that linger too long, on silences filled with things unsaid, on the contrast between the life that has been lived and the one waiting just beyond reach. Every scene carries a deeper meaning, every choice a reflection of something greater. The film is not just about love or passion. It is about transformation, about the way we define ourselves, about what it truly means to break free. One of the most powerful themes in the film is self-discovery. Rebecca is a woman who has spent her entire life following a script that was handed to her long before she ever had the chance to question it. She is the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect hostess in a home that looks like something out of a magazine. But perfection, as the film suggests, is not the same as fulfillment. The life she has built is beautiful, but it is not hers. She has been living for others for so long that she no longer knows what it means to want something for herself. Her journey is not just about finding love, it is about finding herself. Paris represents something entirely different. She is confident, self-assured, comfortable in her own skin. She is the opposite of Rebecca in every way, not just in age or experience, but in the way she moves through the world without hesitation. She does not need to seek herself, she already knows who she is. But what makes their relationship so compelling is that Paris does not impose her worldview on Rebecca. She does not try to shape her or force her into change. Instead, she simply exists as a mirror, allowing Rebecca to see herself clearly for the first time. The film uses mirrors and reflections as one of its most significant symbols. In Rebecca's home, there are mirrors everywhere, yet she never truly looks at herself. When she does, it is in fragments, half her face, a glimpse of her body as she passes by. She is disconnected from her own reflection, from the reality of who she is. But when she is with Paris, the way she sees herself changes. The first time she allows herself to truly look in a mirror is in Paris's apartment, in a space where she feels safe enough to exist without pretense. It is a moment that seems small, but in reality, it is the first step toward her awakening. Another recurring symbol is light and shadow. In Rebecca's home, the lighting is often cold, clinical. The spaces are well lit but lifeless, emphasizing how controlled and rigid her world has become. There are no places for secrets, no spaces where she can hide. But in Paris's presence, the lighting shifts. There are warm tones, soft glows, shadows that allow her to feel hidden yet seen at the same time. It is in these dimly lit moments that she allows herself to be vulnerable. The interplay of light and dark throughout the film mirrors her internal struggle, the fear of stepping into something unknown versus the desire to escape the confines of the life she has always known. The theme of time is another undercurrent running through the story. Rebecca's journey is not just about change, it is about urgency. She does not have forever. The realization that her time is limited is what pushes her toward transformation. The ticking clock is both literal and metaphorical. It is the reality of her illness, but it is also the weight of the years she has already lost. Every moment with Paris becomes more than just a moment. It is something stolen, something precious. The film never makes her illness the center of the story, but it is always there, a quiet reminder that life does not wait for us to be ready. Paris herself is a symbol, not just of love or passion, but of freedom. She is someone who has built her life outside of conventional expectations. She does not live within the same rules that have kept Rebecca confined for so long. And yet, she is not untouchable. She has her own vulnerabilities, her own unspoken struggles. The film does not portray her as a fantasy or an escape, but as a real person who, despite her confidence, still carries the weight of her own experiences. Water is another subtle but important symbol in the film. It appears in small but meaningful ways, a glass of water held too tightly, a bath that seems to symbolize both cleansing and surrender. Water is often associated with renewal, with rebirth, with transformation. For Rebecca, it represents the process of shedding her old self, of washing away the expectations that have defined her for so long. It is no coincidence that some of the most emotionally significant moments in the film happen near or around water. It is as if, each time she immerses herself, she is emerging as someone new. The film's title itself, A Perfect Ending, is layered with meaning. What does a perfect ending look like? For most of her life, Rebecca believed that a perfect ending meant fulfilling her role, being a good wife, a good mother, a woman who followed the path set before her. But by the end of the film, she understands that perfection is not about following rules. It is about embracing the truth of who you are, even if it comes late, even if it means letting go of everything you once believed to be certain. The ending of the film is not traditional, not the kind of love story conclusion that audiences expect. But it is perfect in its own way, because it is Rebecca's choice, her moment of clarity, her final act of self-acceptance. The film also explores the theme of second chances. So often, society tells us that love, passion, and self-discovery have an expiration date. That once we reach a certain age, once we have built a certain life, we no longer have the right to seek something more. A Perfect Ending rejects this entirely. It tells its audience that it is never too late to change, to love, to finally embrace what has been missing. Perhaps one of the most moving aspects of the film is that it does not frame Rebecca's transformation as something shameful or reckless. It is not about breaking the rules for the sake of breaking them. It is about realizing that the rules were never meant to confine her in the first place. It is about stepping beyond what is expected and choosing, for the first time, to live for herself. Even the smallest symbols, the way Rebecca's wardrobe changes, the way her body language shifts, the way she begins to take up more space in her own life, speak to this transformation. In the beginning, she is hesitant, careful, always making herself smaller. But by the end, even in the quietest moments, she moves with more certainty. She is no longer looking for permission. She has already given it to herself. The power of A Perfect Ending lies in these details, in the way it weaves its themes into every frame, every word, every unspoken thought. It is a story about love, yes, but more than that, it is a story about liberation. It is about the courage to embrace what has always been waiting, just beyond the edge of fear. And in the end, it is not just Rebecca's story. It is a story that belongs to anyone who has ever felt trapped by expectations, anyone who has ever questioned if they are allowed to want more. The film does not give easy answers, but it does offer something far more valuable: the reminder that it is never too late to begin again. Some films rely on spectacle to capture an audience's attention. They use massive set pieces, elaborate CGI, and fast-paced editing to create an experience that overwhelms the senses. A Perfect Ending is the opposite. It does not demand attention, it invites it. It does not shout, it whispers. It is a film that breathes, that allows space for silence, for hesitation, for the weight of emotion to settle before moving forward. Every choice made in the filmmaking process was intentional, designed not just to tell a story but to immerse the audience in its world, in its characters, in the quiet transformations that take place within them. Director Nicole Kahn understood from the beginning that a perfect ending was not about excess. It was about subtlety. It was about using the tools of filmmaking, lighting, framing, sound, editing, to reflect the internal journey of its protagonist. Every technical decision was made with this in mind, ensuring that the audience was not just watching Rebecca's story but feeling it with her. Cinematography played one of the most significant roles in shaping the film's atmosphere. The camera does not just observe, it lingers. It moves with the characters, capturing the small moments that might otherwise go unnoticed. Rebecca's world, in the beginning, is framed with precision. The shots are controlled, symmetrical, reflecting the rigidity of her life. She is often filmed in wide shots, alone in large, empty spaces, emphasizing her isolation. Even when she is with her husband, the distance between them is palpable, not just emotional, but physical, reinforced by the way they are positioned within the frame. As the film progresses, as Rebecca begins to step outside of the life she has always known, the cinematography shifts. The shots become more fluid, the camera moves in closer. When she is with Paris, the framing is intimate, capturing the softness of their moments together. The lighting changes as well. Her home is bathed in cold, artificial light, but in Paris's presence, there is warmth, a golden glow that makes the space feel alive. These changes are not just aesthetic choices, they are visual representations of Rebecca's transformation. One of the most striking filmmaking techniques used in A Perfect Ending is its use of mirrors and reflections. Rebecca is often shown looking at herself but never truly seeing. In the beginning, mirrors fragment her, showing only parts of her face, her body, never allowing her to appear whole. It is a subtle but powerful way of reinforcing her internal struggle. She is disconnected from herself, unable to fully confront what she wants. But as she changes, so do her reflections. In one of the film's most significant visual moments, she looks at herself in a mirror and, for the first time, sees herself fully. It is a moment of quiet realization, of acceptance, made even more powerful by the fact that no words are spoken. Editing in A Perfect Ending is deliberately paced. It does not rush. It allows moments to unfold naturally, giving the audience time to sit with the characters, to process their emotions alongside them. The film does not rely on quick cuts or flashy transitions. Instead, it embraces stillness. There are long takes, moments where the camera simply holds on a character's face, letting their emotions speak louder than dialogue ever could. One of the most effective uses of editing in the film is the way it contrasts Rebecca's two worlds, the life she has built versus the life she is discovering. Scenes of her daily routine are structured, precise, often cutting away before anything lingers too long. But when she is with Paris, the editing slows down. The cuts are fewer, the shots longer. Time itself seems to stretch, as if allowing her to exist in this new world for just a little longer. Sound design is another crucial element that shapes the film's emotional landscape. The absence of sound is just as important as its presence. In Rebecca's home, there is an eerie quietness, a stillness that feels suffocating. The sound of footsteps echoing down an empty hallway, the distant hum of a clock, the clinking of silverware against a plate, these small sounds become amplified, emphasizing the loneliness that lingers in every corner of her life. But in moments of transformation, sound is used to heighten intimacy. When Rebecca and Paris are together, the sounds are softer, the rustling of sheets, the whisper of breath, the subtle shifts in movement. There is a tenderness in the way sound is captured, making the audience feel as if they are intruding on something private, something sacred. Music in A Perfect Ending is not overpowering. It is woven seamlessly into the fabric of the film, enhancing emotions without dictating them. The score is delicate, often using piano and strings to create a sense of longing, of melancholy. There are moments where the music swells, but never in a way that feels manipulative. Instead, it acts as an extension of Rebecca's emotions, rising and falling with her as she navigates the complexities of her journey. One of the most powerful uses of sound in the film comes in its moments of silence. There are scenes where dialogue fades away, where the only thing the audience is left with is the weight of unspoken emotion. These moments are some of the most impactful, forcing the audience to sit in the same uncertainty, the same fear, the same realization as the characters. The film's approach to physical intimacy is also notable. Many films use intimacy as a spectacle, something to be exaggerated, to be put on display. A Perfect Ending does not. It treats these moments with care, ensuring that they feel authentic rather than performative. The camera does not leer, does not invade. It remains gentle, capturing touch not as something gratuitous, but as something deeply meaningful. These scenes are not about physicality. They are about emotion, about trust, about the way two people can find solace in one another. Box office performance is often used as a measure of a film's success, but A Perfect Ending was never about breaking records. It was not designed for mainstream appeal, and it did not have the massive marketing campaigns of Hollywood blockbusters. Instead, it found its audience organically. It was a film that spread through word of mouth, through recommendations, through people who saw themselves in Rebecca's story and felt compelled to share it. It premiered in a way that was fitting, quietly, intimately, reaching those who needed it most. It was embraced by audiences looking for something real, something that did not fit into the typical Hollywood mold. It became a film that resonated, not because of its financial success, but because of the emotional impact it left on those who watched it. In many ways, A Perfect Ending is a testament to the power of independent cinema. It proves that a film does not need a massive budget or elaborate effects to tell a compelling story. What matters is honesty, authenticity, the ability to make an audience feel something real. The film's legacy is not in its box office numbers, but in the conversations it sparked, in the people who saw themselves reflected in its story. It is a film that lingers, not because of spectacle, but because of the quiet truths it reveals. And that, more than anything, is what makes A Perfect Ending so unforgettable. It is not a film that tries to impress. It is a film that dares to be honest. Some films rely on spectacle to leave an impact. Others rely on the power of human connection. A Perfect Ending falls into the latter category, a film that resonates not because of its scale, but because of the rawness it brings to the screen. It is a story that lingers in the mind long after the credits roll, and much of that is due to the people who brought it to life. The cast who embodied their roles with vulnerability, the director who guided the film with a deeply personal vision, and the audience who saw themselves reflected in its quiet, powerful moments. Barbara Niven, the heart of the film, was no stranger to acting when she took on the role of Rebecca. She had spent years in Hollywood, working in television and film, playing roles that fit within the industry's expectations. But A Perfect Ending was different. It was not about playing a part, it was about becoming. When director Nicole Kahn approached her with the script, Niven hesitated. It was not because she did not believe in the story, but because she knew how much it would demand of her. In interviews, Niven later revealed that she almost said no. The role was deeply personal, requiring an emotional and physical vulnerability that she had never explored on screen before. But something about the story spoke to her. Maybe it was Rebecca's quiet longing, the way she lived in a world that no longer felt like her own. Maybe it was the idea that transformation could come at any age, that it was never too late to step into something new. Whatever it was, Niven eventually said yes. And in doing so, she delivered one of the most moving performances of her career. Her approach to Rebecca was careful, deliberate. She did not want to play the character as a stereotype, the repressed woman seeking an escape. Instead, she wanted to show her as someone real, someone who had spent so long living for others that she had forgotten what it meant to live for herself. She worked closely with Kahn to make sure every moment felt honest. She did not just act in the film, she allowed herself to be seen in a way that was deeply personal. Jessica Clarke, who played Paris, was at the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of experience. A former model, she was still new to acting when she was cast in A Perfect Ending. The weight of the role was not lost on her. Paris was not just the love interest. She was a catalyst, someone who had to exist in a way that felt effortless, yet carried an emotional depth that would make Rebecca's journey feel earned. Clarke later admitted in interviews that stepping onto set was intimidating. She was working alongside a seasoned actress, stepping into a role that carried enormous significance. But from the moment she met Niven, the nerves faded. They built a bond off-screen that translated into their performances, a trust that allowed them to bring authenticity to every scene. One of the biggest challenges was the intimacy between their characters. Hollywood often portrays physical intimacy in a way that feels staged, designed more for spectacle than for emotional depth. Con did not want that. She wanted something real, something that felt like an extension of the emotional connection between Rebecca and Paris. Niven and Clarke spent time rehearsing, not just the physical aspects, but the emotional beats leading up to those moments. They talked through their characters' motivations, making sure that every touch, every glance felt earned. When the cameras rolled, the result was something rare, intimacy that did not feel performative, but deeply human. Behind the scenes, the atmosphere on set was one of trust. Con created an environment where the actors felt safe to be vulnerable. The crew was small, which added to the intimacy of the production. There were no massive lighting setups, no grand technical distractions, just a focus on the characters, on the emotions unfolding in front of the camera. One of the most unexpected moments on set happened during the filming of a particularly emotional scene. The intensity of the moment was so real that when Con called cut, there was a silence that hung in the air. Even the crew, who had watched every take up until that point, felt the weight of it. Niven, overcome with emotion, had to step away for a moment to collect herself. It was a reminder of just how personal this story had become, not just for the characters, but for the people bringing it to life. When A Perfect Ending was finally released, it did not arrive with the massive marketing campaigns of Hollywood films. It was not designed for the mainstream. It was designed for those who needed to see it. And when it found its audience, the response was overwhelming. Audience reviews poured in, not just from film critics, but from people who saw their own lives reflected in Rebecca's story. Women wrote to Niven, to Con, to Clarke, sharing their own experiences, stories of longing, of discovery, of stepping into their own truth later in life. The film was more than just entertainment. It was a mirror, showing people that it was never too late to find themselves. Many praised the film for its honesty, for the way it handled love and desire without sensationalism. One review described it as a love story told with grace and truth, highlighting how rare it was to see a film that treated female desire with the same depth and importance as any other kind of love story. Others spoke about how it changed their perspective, how it gave them the courage to question the roles they had been playing in their own lives. But the film was not without its critics. Some found its pacing slow, its silences too drawn out. There were those who expected something more conventional, a story that fit neatly into the expected formulas of romance. But even those who did not connect with it could not deny its sincerity. It was a film that was unapologetically itself, unafraid to take its time, unafraid to be quiet in a world that so often demands noise. For the cast, the impact of the film extended far beyond its release. Niven spoke often about how A Perfect Ending changed her, not just as an actress, but as a person. It gave her a new understanding of what it meant to be vulnerable, to be open, to tell stories that mattered. Clarke, too, found herself deeply affected. She had stepped into the role of Paris as a newcomer, unsure of how she would be received. But by the time the film was finished, she had not just played a character. She had lived something transformative. Con, reflecting on the film years later, spoke about how proud she was of what they had created. It was never about making a film for mass appeal. It was about telling a story that needed to be told, about giving voice to emotions that so often go unspoken. And in that, A Perfect Ending had succeeded. The film's legacy is not in box office numbers or awards. It is in the letters, the messages, the people who found themselves in its story. It is in the conversations it sparked, the lives it touched, the quiet but undeniable impact it left behind. Some films fade over time, their impact lessened by the years. A Perfect Ending is not one of those films. It remains, just as powerful as the day it was released, because it is not just a story. It is an experience. It is a reminder that love, desire, and self-discovery have no age limit. That sometimes, the most profound journeys happen when we least expect them. And for those who have ever felt trapped by expectation, who have ever wondered if it was too late to choose themselves, A Perfect Ending stands as a quiet, beautiful answer. It is never too late. The story is always still being written. Some films entertain. Some films provoke thought. And some films leave behind something much deeper, a lingering feeling, a quiet shift in perspective, a story that stays with you long after the credits roll. A Perfect Ending is one of those films. It is not loud. It does not seek attention with dramatic twists or grand spectacles. Instead, it unfolds gently, patiently, allowing its audience to feel every moment, to step inside its world and walk beside its characters as they navigate love, longing, and self-discovery. From the very first frame, it is clear that A Perfect Ending is not a traditional love story. It does not follow the expected paths of romance or passion. Instead, it tells a story of awakening, of a woman who has spent her entire life confined by the expectations placed upon her, and who, for the first time, allows herself to question what she truly wants. Rebecca's journey is not just about love or desire, it is about reclaiming herself. It is about stepping beyond fear, beyond hesitation, beyond the carefully constructed walls of her life, and embracing something that has always been waiting for her, herself. Paris, the woman who enters Rebecca's world, is not just a love interest. She is a catalyst. She does not pull Rebecca into something reckless. She simply holds up a mirror and allows her to see what has been hidden for so long. Their connection is not built on fantasy. It is built on honesty, on trust, on the simple but profound act of being seen. The filmmaking itself mirrors this intimacy. The cinematography is quiet, deliberate, moving with the characters rather than imposing itself upon them. The use of mirrors and reflections serves as a visual metaphor for Rebecca's transformation, showing her fractured self in the beginning and her whole, unguarded self by the end. Lighting shifts from cold, sterile tones to warm, inviting hues, mirroring the shift in Rebecca's emotions. The sound design is subtle, using silence as powerfully as it uses music. The editing does not rush. It allows moments to breathe, to settle, to linger. The production of A Perfect Ending was not just about telling a story, it was about creating an experience that felt real. Barbara Niven's performance was deeply personal, a reflection of her own journey of self-discovery. Jessica Clarke, stepping into the role of Paris, brought both strength and vulnerability, creating a character who was both confident and deeply human. The chemistry between them was not forced. It was built on trust, on understanding, on a shared commitment to telling a story that mattered. Behind the scenes, the cast and crew worked with a sense of purpose. This was not just another project. It was something different, something rare. Nicole Kahn, the director, approached every scene with care, ensuring that every moment felt true to the story being told. The intimacy of the set, the small crew, the trust between actors, it all contributed to a film that did not just depict emotions but captured them in their purest form. And then there was the audience. The people who watched A Perfect Ending did not just see a film, they saw themselves. They saw their own struggles, their own doubts, their own quiet longings reflected back at them. The response was overwhelming. Letters, messages, stories from people who had never seen their experiences portrayed on screen before. Women who had spent their lives feeling unseen, people who had believed it was too late to change, too late to love, too late to start over. And then they saw Rebecca. And they realized it is never too late. Some critics questioned the film's pacing, its silences, its refusal to conform to the expected beats of traditional storytelling. But that was precisely what made it powerful. It was not meant to be like everything else. It was meant to be felt, to be experienced, to be lived in. And for those who connected with it, it was not just a film. It was a moment of clarity, a reminder that life does not end when we stop looking for more. The legacy of A Perfect Ending is not in its box office numbers or in mainstream recognition. It is in the people who carried its message with them, who found courage in its story, who realized that their own story was still being written. And that is why films like this matter. Because they remind us that love is not about time, it is about depth. That passion does not belong only to the young, it belongs to the willing. That self-discovery is not something we experience once, it is something we can choose again and again, whenever we are ready. If you have enjoyed this deep dive into A Perfect Ending, if you love films that challenge conventions, that tell stories that are raw and real, then make sure to subscribe. There are so many more films to explore, so many more stories waiting to be uncovered, so many more moments that deserve to be felt. Because sometimes the most profound stories are not the ones that demand attention. They are the ones that whisper, the ones that wait patiently to be found. And once they are, they never truly leave us.